What's going on, Felters? It's time to talk about the Miami Dolphins. How'd they do in 2024? How can they improve for 2025? An 8-9 season, a slight decline, falling out of the playoffs this past season. But hey, another Tua injury to blame, a Tyreek Hill injury to blame. A lot to unpack here. But first, Reagan, how are you doing, my friends?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk about this warm-weathered aquatic team down in Miami. But yeah, man, doing good. Just love talking ball. Loving this mini series we got going on right now. So
it's a lot of fun. So, all right, man, let's start it off. What grade did you give the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, for me, I'm giving them an F. Similar to what I gave the Jets. Yeah, dude, it was because ultimately, they took a major step back, and I understand injuries factor into it, but this is a team that had playoff aspirations, and
they won 8 games, dude.
I don't care. They were in the playoffs last year.
That's an
F? Yes. Based off of expectations, because
what were your expectations preseason?
My expectation was a team that would take a step forward. Last year, they win that Week 18 game against Buffalo. They're playing a home playoff game, but instead they got to go on the road. They lose to Kansas City in the cold weather. Fine. Then coming into this year, it's like, all right, they're basically running it back with the same team. They got some holes, but you expect this to be a playoff team, or at least, maybe you expect it to be a playoff team, but also a team hopefully hosting a home playoff game team. And, they were right there with the Jets and the Bills coming into the season to win the division. That was wide open to me. And they obviously took a major step back, didn't even make the playoffs. And I understand they have injuries and stuff, but still, it seems like this team has started to falter, and people are starting to figure out what Mike McDaniel wants to run. So I'm giving him an F. I'm sorry. I don't care. It was a terrible season, and maybe Dolphins fans will kick back and be like, whoa, you're being a little too crazy. But ultimately, it's just gone downhill every season. So I don't have confidence in this team going into next year. Maybe you can make some other pieces work, and it's another one where you're injuries and stuff, but it's another year of Tua getting concussed. That was the issue going into it, and they didn't decide to address the backup quarterback position in the offseason, and they paid the price. So that is on them. If they went out and spent money on a backup like Joe Flacco or a bigger name guy that could have stepped in and won them some games, then they would have been a playoff team. But instead, they were fine with Mike White, Snoop Huntley, who am I forgetting about? Who's the Kansas State guy they had that was 2 or 3 years ago? Skylar Thompson, yes. Thank you. So that's what they decided to roll with, and they paid the price. Where if maybe you went out and got Joe Flacco, or maybe you went out and got Jameis Winston, or one of those more accomplished backups, then we're looking at a team that was in the playoffs, and they're getting a totally different grade.
Yo, did you forget that Snoop made a Pro Bowl, dude?
This is true. I am being a little disrespectful.
That's a Mickey Mouse Pro Bowl selection. Oh, and also, did you forget that clearly you didn't see the NFLPA report cards? The Dolphins were number 1, dude. You didn't see that, did you?
This is true. Maybe I'm just being a hater, but
these are all things that don't matter. I'm just fucking around. But dude, you're talking about taking a huge step back. They won 4 games. They still won 8 games with Tua getting another concussion, which I will say is a negative. That's a monster blemish on the report card for me. Is him getting hurt yet again. And I get C-, right? You won 8 games. You were around 500. You were middle of the pack. The defense was really good, and you lost Fangio, but you were 4th in total defense, 9th in pass, 9th in rush, 10th in scoring. That's solid. It was the offense that took a big step back, and what you can point to is the concussion for Tua, Tyreek Hill tearing a ligament in his wrist at the beginning of the season. Clearly, he was not the same player. Monster drop back for him from the 2023 season. So that was a problem. But, there were some positives here, particularly the defensive side of the ball. Zach Sieler, DT, 10 sacks. That's pretty damn good. Jordan Brooks, linebacker, 10th in the league in tackles, 143. That's pretty damn good. You bring in Calais Campbell, a veteran presence at 38. He was very good for you. Javon Holland, the back end was good, although he's a free agent. There were positives to look at on the defensive side of the ball. It was just weird. The offense took a big step back, but you could point to the injuries. And also, yes, Reagan, I agree with you to a point. Mike McDaniel's going to have to figure some things out because what he was doing is not working as much anymore. I also agree with you on that point. The little the dink and dunk, the lateral kind of passing game with all the speed. Like, Achane was awesome this year, but
he was.
Clearly
But dude,
it's not working.
Also,
as
the
much.
way you're talking about the defense and stuff, I feel like you're almost comparing them to the New England Patriots, where it's like, we didn't have high expectations, so there's some positives to take away. At the end of the day, yeah, it's nice, the positives, but this should have been a playoff team. Like, this should not have been an 8-win team coming into the season. Dolphins fans were expecting to take that next step, win a playoff game, have some home playoff games, maybe even be, in the AFC Championship game, not sitting at home on the couch.
I agree with you. And
so those positives aren't enough to get them into the D-, D range. Like, it's a failure of a season. F for failure.
But Tua also only played 11 games.
Yes, but okay, that's fine. But it's not. It's an injury where you knew it was a concern. It wasn't like, oh, he had a freak, ankle injury or a freak like tear, and it was like the season was ruined. It's not the Aaron Rodgers rupturing his Achilles injury. It's the Tua Tagovailoa, whatever. Oh yeah, that's a tongue.
Jeez, man, Tagovailoa. We've been hearing his name for like 10 years now, dude.
It's a tongue twister for sure. But the Tua, listen, the Tua injury was something that they knew about. Like, and what I went into before.
You gave it your best effort, like you were trying to say it right.
Bro.
Oh, that was great, dude. Oh, that was great.
But yeah, so I'm not gonna make excuses here.
Bro,
But well,
you're like trying to go to war with me right now. I gave a C-. I didn't give him a B, dude. I gave a C. That's a bad grade, a C-.
No, I'm more
F.
I'm going to war with you because you're trying to give him a pass for Tua being injured, but that's on them. That's a failure on them to bring in a backup quarterback. So I don't even think you should give them be like, well, they didn't have Tua, so that's why I'm giving them a C-. I'd rather you just be like, Tua has no factor in this grade because that is unbelievably bad on the GM.
That's not what I said. Okay, you just said something that I completely No, I said him getting hurt again is a negative blemish on my report card. I literally said that 3 minutes ago, but clearly
I'm just keeping you honest. I'm just
saying it's not a factor in their grade.
It's a give or take.
It's a give or take, right? Tua only played 11 games, their starting quarterback. They won 8. Okay, like that's pretty solid for only having your starting quarterback for 11, right? But at the same time, yes, they should have addressed the backup quarterback position in a better way last offseason. I agree with you there wholeheartedly. Absolutely. And I think if they don't do it this offseason, like you're just asking for another concussion next year and Tua might be done for good. So we talked about this last offseason, man. Like if it's one more concussion, is he done? Well, he got another. He's not done, but it's certainly a problem. It's to the point where like every time he gets outside the pocket, the entire Dolphins sideline is just like clenching, like just nervous for what's going to happen. And that you never want that for any player, particularly the quarterback that you're paying a shit ton of money.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what they do. Let's get into that offseason though, because I know at the top of my list for something they could do is going to be getting a backup quarterback.
I like it. They got $15 million, so they can add a backup quarterback. Some key free agents here. Jevon Holland, he seems like he's on his way out. I don't know. I'm sure they'd like to retain him, but I'm seeing him get linked to a lot of other teams in free agency. Emmanuel Ogbah, Calais Campbell, Jordan Poyer. I mean, he's on the last legs of his career. Isaiah Wynn. And Terron Armstead actually just adjusted his contract because he's still unsure that he's going to play. The Dolphins are assuming that he's not going to play in 2025, and that is probably the best offensive lineman that they have. And that's, for me, their biggest offseason priority is the offensive line, and to lose Armstead just creates another massive hole that they did not need. But, before Armstead adjusted his contract to basically take away all the guaranteed money and clear like $14 million, they had like nothing, right? So now they got like 15 to play with. Who's that backup quarterback that you want? And then I think it's got to be offensive line.
Give me Jameis, honestly.
Oh, I like that.
Unless somebody wants to pay him to come compete as a starter, which I don't know if they will. I saw enough with him in Cleveland where everybody else in that situation, even, Miami's backup quarterback, Snoop Huntley, wasn't able to, get a chance.
That's a great one.
He came in, he actually was moving the ball downfield, and every other option they put in for the Browns didn't seem to be able to move it at all. He kept them competitive. He won that game against Pittsburgh. That was a big win. And, him and Jerry Jeudy were really connecting. So I would imagine, if you have to put him in, at least he can move the ball downfield. He can push it to Waddle, Jonnu Smith, Tyreek Hill, those weapons. So I think he'd fully utilize it. It really comes down to, what other teams are willing to pay him. Because, there could be a team that's willing to pay him enough money to come compete as the starting quarterback. I don't hate Joe Flacco either, but I think they definitely need one of those veterans that can push the ball downfield if needed. You can't bring in a game manager. You need someone that's going to, give all these weapons a chance to get open and, win those jump balls.
Yeah, dude, I think that's a really good fit. I love the comparison of Snoop's time in Cleveland to Jameis's. Jameis, just look at Jerry Jeudy. It was really cool to see what he did. And, you look at the Dolphins, like, you got to expect Tyreek Hill to have a bounce back season next year because he won't have a torn ligament in his wrist. I don't think he's going to get back to that 2023 level again, but somewhere in between, I think you can be comfortable with. Jalen Waddle, like, I'm kind of down on him, like, not down on his talent, but the production and, how he kind of disappears. But, Jameis with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, that'd be a lot of fun for fantasy football, at least.
Oh, it would be very fun for fantasy football. If you have him in Dynasty, you'd be very happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Jameis just chucking bombs at Tyreek. Now, 2 of them are going to get picked, but Tyreek's going to get one of them, Now, the Dolphins are at pick number 13, Reagan. A lot of mocks that I'm seeing are addressing the offensive line. Maybe a guy like Kelvin Banks out of Texas if he's there, or maybe a Tyler Booker on the interior out of Alabama. I don't think that a guy like Will Campbell's going to be there, but, a lot of offensive line. I'm also seeing some tight ends. Jonnu Smith he had some pretty good games for him last year, but a guy like Tyler Warren that can affect the run game and the passing game and kind of add a different dimension to that offense, I would like that too. But it seems like a bit of a premium pick there where I think you got to address the trenches.
I think it would be foolish of Miami to not go offensive line. I think if they go for a premium player, that is not going to sit well. They have enough gadgets and toys right now. I don't think they need to add someone else. Jonnu Smith had a hell of a year. I think they're fine rolling him out. You still got Achane, you got Waddle, you got Tyreek. So they got enough guys that they can draw up these plays. McDaniels doesn't need another toy. He just needs someone that can block so that he can set up these creative trick plays. Because it doesn't matter who you have. If you can't block and you can't set up these long developing plays, it will not matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't really care what offensive linemen they get. They just need to get somebody. They need some bodies because this team is going to be in a bad spot if they don't address a couple linemen in free agency and then draft.
Yeah, and I think if you're under the assumption that Armstead's gone, like, dude, that's a gaping hole. I know, left tackle isn't to his blind side, but you need to address left tackle. I think Josh Simmons out of Ohio State makes a lot of sense. If he didn't get hurt, we'd be talking about him potentially going number 4 to New England instead of Will Campbell, I think. But he's like your true number 1, like, pure tackle, where Will Campbell kind of has tackle guard flexibility. But Josh Simmons was a beast this year for Ohio State before getting hurt. And I think that would, assuming he's fully healthy off the injury, I think that would be a home run pick for Miami. Some other positions of need that you're going to have to help the back end of the defense if Holland leaves. You still got Ramsey, but I could see some more help in the back end of that defense. I do like Jalen Phillips a lot, but, I believe he got hurt again this year. So
he did.
Maybe. Yeah, and you got Bradley Chubb too. So pass rush doesn't seem like a big need, but I think they could add another on day 2. I don't know. What do you think what else they could do in this draft?
Yeah, I think Holland's gone for sure. I think with, the cap space they have and the other gaping needs they have, they got to let him walk. I also think he's going to fetch a pretty penny that they won't be able to afford in the open market. So I would like to see them address the safety position as well in the 2nd or 3rd round. Holland was a 2nd round pick. I remember out of Oregon. So that would be a good spot there. But defensively, they could definitely use another edge rusher. It really comes down to the trenches on both sides. And then I'd say the secondary for this team right now. Maybe you draft a quarterback on day 2, but I don't know. It's hard. It's hard because you don't want to give up on Tua, but it's also like whether it's free agency or day 2, you need to get somebody else there to at least be there as a backup plan because, we don't know. And I hate to keep going to it, but you just don't know how many more concussions this guy can take.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a guy for me that makes a lot of sense in terms of free agency along that offensive line, given that they only have 15 mil to play with at this time, is Kevin Zeitler from the Detroit Lions. He's an older guy. He's a vet. He's 34 years old, but he was a dog this year, especially in the run game. And we've seen him be a part of some great Baltimore offensive lines and a great Detroit offensive line. I think he'll be cheap given his age. You can plug him in as a 1-year deal and just get as much help as you can get up front to protect Tua Tagovailoa. So if you go tackle in round 1 and add a veteran like Zeitler to kind of play alongside him, I think that's a recipe that could pay a lot of dividends for Miami next year.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they're probably gonna have to go the route of multiple cheap veteran deals, hoping that some of these guys still have some juice left in the tank. I think that's pretty evident at this point.
Yeah, like I don't think, they can really go fishing on the top of the free agent tackle market like a Ronnie Stanley. Like I ultimately think Ronnie Stanley is going to go back to Baltimore, but tackle's a massive need. Like you're not going to go with like Tyron Smith after what you've seen from him. He might be really cheap though at this point. Like maybe could Tyron Smith be a fit?
Yeah, but he's not going to play. You're also guaranteeing yourself 10 games max.
Yeah, no, that's the downside with a Tyron Smith at this point, right? Like
you'll
get a good
for
10
like
games,
half a season. Yeah.
Yeah, but you better have some guys waiting in the wings.
For sure. But you ready to get Drock in here? I'm good.
Yeah, let's get Drock in here.
What's up, boys? Let's bring the energy. We're a little down right now, so let's fire it up, all right?
Oh, yeah, we can fire it up. Let's go. Let's go.
We're just rate a game and a half. I'm feeling a little bit of Jets bias here, but.
Yeah. All right. One question I got for you guys. Is Tua the long-term answer at quarterback, or should the Dolphins start planning for life after him?
I don't think he is at this point.
I don't think he is either. But the problem is you're so invested in him now, and he's shown you that he can lead you to the playoffs where you can't backtrack on that contract. You have to roll with him until the wheels fall off. And you're hoping the wheels never fall off, but it's the biggest question mark in the sport right now is Tua Tagovailoa's health. And that's a massive problem. He did earn the contract in terms of his play, but now you got to live with the consequences if there is going to be another head injury. And unfortunately, history, you don't want to say it, but historically, that's what we've seen, right? We've seen it the last couple of years, and it's not been good. We're obviously rooting for him. We hope he stays healthy, but you got to invest in a good backup, as we were speaking of earlier, and hope that the wheels don't fall off anytime soon.
Yeah, I would say he's not the future. I think at this point, they might be moving on from him and Mike McDaniels at the same time, because I would imagine, if they do another year, maybe more than a year, but another 2-3 years of this, and it's still like, you're not getting past even the first, second round, not even reaching like an AFC championship game, they're going to move on. And I'd imagine, whatever new GM and new coach comes in, they're probably not going to want a guy that's dealt with multiple concussions that, probably isn't the long-term answer. So I could see them trying to get away from him after the contract, or, trading him away with a year or two left on his deal to a team that, might want to try to see if he can compete. So my guess is we look at this team 2-3 years from now, it's a whole new coach, it's a whole new quarterback, it's a whole new regime.
That is a wild call out of you, but honestly, it's certainly in the cards.
I feel like it's more likely than not.
You think it's more likely in 3 years Tua and McDaniels are gone than that they're here? You clearly, yes. I told you about the report card, right? He's getting an A+ McDaniel.
I do, bro. I do. I think the AFC's too loaded, and I think, I until he proves that he can adjust and Tua proves that he can stay healthy, like for a full season. And even if he does stay healthy, I think the brain is just something that's different. Like it's so undiscovered and unknown that like he could stay healthy all this year and then next year he can get a major concussion. And it's like, we're right back to it. So I don't know. I'm going to lean on the side as there'll be someone else there in 2 to 3 years. Not those guys.
That's a fair point. Well, everyone, that wraps up our Dolphins recap from 2024, the offseason outlook. Miami Dolphins fans, I'm sure you guys want some offensive linemen, but hit our comments. What else do you think they should do in this offseason? We'd love to hear from you. Reagan, any last words, my friends?
Yeah, I mean, was I that crazy for giving him an F? Let me know. Like, maybe if you guys are gonna cry and be like, "Hey, we're at least a D." I mean, I'd love to know, where you guys are at. But like Colin said, like, what do you want him to do in the offseason and stuff? And also, what do you guys think? Is Tua the long-term answer? I'd love to know that. Like, where you guys are at on Tua and McDaniel and this whole team. So, thanks, guys.